going to be the largest and most comprehensive update on affordable housing that we have done since I have been in office. And it could not be more important because affordable housing is our number one issue as a community and to thrive as a community. Why? Because everything else is related to it. Anything else we care about, if it's transportation, if it's the arts, if it's the environment, if we don't live here, who is it for and whom is going to carry out that work? So every issue is a housing issue. Well, let's start with asking, okay, we all recognize that housing is super important, so why are we not getting it done? Why are we falling short? And it's three primary reasons. The first one, and I'm going to have some notes with me today because it's important to get this right, so strap in, get some popcorn, we'll get through this. The first one is legacy. We are really lucky that we have been out in front of this since the 70s, right? We are really, really lucky that in a town of 7,000 people, we have nearly 3,000 affordable housing units. But the converse of that is we have a lot of complexity and a lot of legacy issues. We have a county, a city, and an APCHA system that don't always work or talk together very well. We have a lot of rules that were made for an era that no longer exists. And so that complexity hampers our ability to deliver what we need today. The second, and I hate to say this, but it's prejudice. It's prejudice that presents in someone who just got their affordable housing unit and says, oh, I don't really think we should do the next phase because I like that view. It's prejudice in the free market homeowners is, yeah, I love affordable housing. That stuff is great, but it's just too many units next door. We can't have 8. We'll need to have 5. It's prejudice in the people who say, love affordable housing, but I don't think we should do it as rentals, and maybe not for that lower category, those lower income workers, because, they just don't live the same way as us, or they're a little messier, they like to party. All of those prejudices keep us from getting the affordable housing we need as a community and we deserve as humans with higher values. The third, no surprise here, it's really expensive. It's very, very expensive. And even in a town as well resourced as we are, we still do not have enough dollars and enough land to produce what we need at the densities we have been willing to accept. So we're going to go through everything we're doing at the APCHA level and at the city level on housing. That's not to omit county because they're not working at it. I'm sure they're doing great work. It's just not my field. I don't know about it. So first, I just have to say a huge thank you, big debt of gratitude to the APCHA staff, to city staff, to community development, to the APCHA board, and to city council, all of whom are taking the broad view and doing and setting the precedent to do the hard things right now. And that's also a fair warning to you, which is what we're going to talk about here is our work plan, what we intend to accomplish over the next year, 5 years, and beyond, because this is going to take a really long time. These are big, complicated issues. But what we have done is put into plan, into writing, what that looks like. And I'm going to share with you those things now so that you have an expectation of where we're going in the future, and then you know how you can help us achieve these, because no doubt many will be difficult, controversial, and expensive, as has been suggested. So, what have we done? Let's start with APCHA. APCHA just went through a strategic planning process with our board to completely rewrite from whole cloth all of our foundational documents. That is our vision statement, our mission statement, the values for which we filter all of our work through, our goals, our tactics, and our 5-year plan. This is a really big deal. And I don't think I actually appreciated how big of a deal it was until I started serving in my role, because these documents set precedent for everything else that staff does now and into the future. So these changes that are reflected here will guide everything well beyond the time when I am no longer on this council. The first thing we rewrote is the vision statement. A vision statement is something that is externally focused, it is aspirational, it's timeless. It might be something that we never achieve, but it is that North Star. It's the I have a dream speech. It's something that is succinct enough that you can parrot, but it is meaningful enough that you can feel and embody. So our new vision statement, without further ado, is to cultivate the country's most vibrant mountain community. Diverse, connected, healthy, and thriving. I would like to live there, and I think I do. Second is we rewrote our mission statement. Now, a mission statement is internally focused, it's operational, it's structural, it's the filter by which staff run everything through and are held accountable to. So our new mission statement is, and you'll allow me to read this because I'm literate, APCHA's mission is to support affordable workforce housing for a sustainable community and a prosperous economy. We accomplish our mission through equitable policies, accountable management, and innovative development to meet the changing needs of APCHA's residents and the community. We effectively communicate and partner with the community to accomplish this. It's not only a beautiful thing to be doing, supporting sustainable community and prosperous economy through workforce housing, but how we do it is important. And so these are the values, the core principles, the pillars, if you will, of the organization moving forward. Public trust, quality service, transparency, accountability, efficiency and effectiveness, a lot of fingers here, and here are two really new ones: equity and innovation. I want to talk about those last two briefly because they're the really new additions. Equity is how we leverage our privilege, which we have in spades, to uplift communities that have been economically, racially, sexually, or otherwise oppressed. Equity is how we live up to the ideal of a lived-in community, where the billionaire, the doctor, the server, the professional, and the busboy get to live here. Because if your labor is required for the functioning of this town, you should have an equal chance to live here. And we should relish that diversity that has made Aspen so special. The billionaire to the busboy, like that's what this place has been about. And we are losing it because our busboys, and let's be frank, the majority of our brown and Latinx community are being sent out of town right now. It's not acceptable. So this inclusion in our values sets the table to change that. And second is innovation. As we talked about, so much of this is difficult because we have been the victims of our success. We got into this process so early that we solved some problems, but we had tools that weren't great. We didn't get to see what anyone else did, and we got locked into an old model. Putting innovation at the front of our values allows us to continually learn and progress and to meet the challenges of each moment, not just this moment. So we should be really proud of those. And those values take us into our goals and tactics. So these are things that we will work on over the next 5 years. Now there's a lot more than what I'm about to tell you. And you can read the whole thing. I will post it to follow this. If you're watching on Facebook, I will post the next post. If you're watching on the gram, go to my Facebook and look on my page, because it's much easier to post this multi-page document there. And I will also be posting the land use coordination piece that we'll talk about next over there. So the goals and tactics that I pulled out, because this is my video, and like these are the ones that I like the most, amongst a variety, are these. First, we are going to create a renewed social compact. What does that mean? It means that after 50 years of affordable housing, things have changed. Expectations have changed. And we need a broad community conversation to help you lead us as to what you desire. Is this workforce housing or community housing? Is it only for the very poor, the middle class, or the relatively wealthy but can't afford it in Aspen? What do we get from this program, and what do we owe back to our community? We will be creating that new compact. 2, the institution and improvement around communication, and specifically two-way communication, means from us to you and from you to us. This is so important, and obviously interlinked with the social compact. Number 3 is to begin an approach that serves the life cycle of an employee. A recognition that that noise over there is the child of an employee, not an employee, and we still want to house them and like feed them and stuff too. Send them to school. And also that one day that person's going to retire, and after having spent 30 or 40 or 50 years building this community, they have a right to stay here, and there's tremendous value to us in them remaining here, not just in their labor, which is important, working at a variety of nonprofits as a volunteer, but also passing along the legacy of their experience to us so that we can bind in the tether that is our history and inform our future from our past. So we're going to house all 3. And it starts here. 3, home track. This is in process, and basically what this means is we are going to take APCHA out from the shoebox that it currently lives in on a stack of these guys and make it digital. Crazy, I know, but then we'll know things like who lives in APCHA, how old are they, how much money do they make, do they want to stay, would they like to move to another unit, are they using their bedrooms? Really basic stuff, but really important. APCHA's coming into the 21st century, and we're kind of carrying it in as we go. Next, capital reserves and maintenance. This has been a huge issue. We have allowed individuals to purchase affordable housing at a reduced market rate, and yet upkeep and maintenance happens at not only a free market rate, but a free market rate in one of the most expensive cities in the country. And there's an incongruity there. It doesn't work. And so as a result, we have deferred maintenance problems, we have capital reserve problems, we have roof problems. How do we solve that for those that got in before? And how do we change the expectations so it works for those who have not yet gotten in? Next, we're going to work on optimizing occupancy. What does that mean? It means that if we're going to make up a number, we have 3,000 units, and they have 3.3 units, or bedrooms per. So let's say we have 10,000 bedrooms. We want to be using 10,000 bedrooms if possible, because to build a new place with 3.3 bedrooms will cost us nearly $1 million. So if we are only using 75%, how can we move that towards 100%? We're going to be working out that puzzle soon. Next is regional coordination. Any of you have seen the traffic study that came out? Basically what it said is, we live all over this valley, and almost none of us live where we work. In every single community in the valley, more likely than not, you are going to leave to work. So if you live in Basalt, you're going to Carbondale, Glenwood, or Aspen. If you live in Carbondale, you're going to one of those other places. So we need to start coordinating with the rest of our valley so that we can create a system that smartly lands people living where they would enjoy working. And the last one that I'm going to call out here is improving program participation. What does that mean? That means finally going down to rifle and talking to the part of our workforce that we always ignore and saying, hey, we would love for you to be in our community. We would love for you to be part of this community because you already are in your labor. How can we create housing that will serve your needs? How can we include you in this program. This is how we make change, people. So that's the APCHA world. Now we're going to move over to the City of Aspen world in something called the Land Use Coordination Project. This is our #1 project of our Community Development Department, and it is having them look at the totality of our land use code, which is what allows or disallows people to put a dinosaur on their roof or build 6 stories or any number of other things, and say, how do we get the most housing out of this? It's important to understand that this is incredibly related to what's going on at APCHA, because if APCHA wants to, for instance, work on housing development innovation, allowing, say, tiny homes and high density units, well, that is limited, allowed or disallowed by the land use code. And so too, in the city world, if we want to develop housing, we are limited by what APCHA will allow within the scope of that innovation, design, and requirements. So these are very much brother and sister dancing around together. So this is a little weedsy, so I'll try to keep it at eye level, and you can check in with the packet if you want more details. The first 4 things here are about the short term. They are about delivering as much housing as possible is now, and they're all interrelated. So the first one is looking at our fee in lieu numbers. Fee in lieu is what a developer can pay in order to meet their requirement for an affordable housing unit when they are not building it themselves or buying a credit from someone who already built it. That number sets not only how much we receive that we can go build money with, but also the credits program, which is when a free market developer builds affordable housing, sells that unit to recoup part of their money, and then gets a credit for creating that unit, which they can then sell to a developer who has to do mitigation on the free market, turning their building of that into a profit margin for them, and for us, providing housing as community members, for the city allowing development to happen without us having to do the development, and hopefully faster, sooner, and cheaper, right? So depending on what that fee in lieu number is, it affects the cost of the credit, which determines how financially viable it is for the person landing the credit. If that didn't make any sense to you, you can read it below or just ask me, but I promise it's real. And the second is that credits program. So how are we providing value so that more and more free market developers want to produce affordable projects and sell those credits? Third is underlying zoning. And again, these are all very related. But where are you allowed to build affordable housing projects? At what density? How much space do you get? How much height do you get? As you can imagine, if what we're trying to do is to supercharge this credit program, get as many free market people building as possible, where it can go, how big it can be, how much that credit is worth, all of those figure into that equation. And ultimately, the question that we're asking, the home run here, what does success look like, is when a private free market developer goes to redevelop a residential piece of property, is it more financially beneficial for them to build a 100% affordable housing project or an empty $20 million spec home? When the answer becomes affordable housing, we have solved this problem. Fourth thing in the short term is mitigation rates. When a project is built, they are required to mitigate or pay or deliver housing for their impact on the community. And those rates right now are 65% of expected employee generation for the commercial core and commercial, and 35% for for free market housing development. And so, are those numbers right? Should they be changed, flipped, increased? We're looking at that. Now, these last two are different. These last two are about the long-term model for how to deliver affordable housing to ensure a diverse lived-in community. And we are going to start to explore something that really hasn't been done anywhere else. So this is us embracing that history of being out front and taking the next step forward. We want to develop a way to deliver development neutral affordable housing. What does that mean? Historically, the way we have gotten affordable housing is we have said for everything you build, if it generates an employee, then you are required to pay your own way, developer, right? And that's worked. It's helped us build a lot of affordable housing. The problem with it is if we don't want overdevelopment, then necessarily the thing we want is bound to the thing that we don't want. And ultimately, we get to one of two places. Either we get way more development than we want, along with our affordable housing, and end up in a town whose character and makeup and aesthetic does not match what we desire. Or we decide we can't take any more overdevelopment and we lose our funding source, and now we can no longer deliver affordable housing, the thing we want. Both of those are bad outcomes, right? So can we find a way to fund, create, and deliver affordable housing that is neutral to or does not require development? That is the goal. And that is a big paradigm shift. Related to that is, how do we determine who should be funding or otherwise helping us create affordable housing in that development neutral architecture? So currently, the way we think about this is employee generation. Because back in the 70s when this program started, most of downtown was not developed. And while we clearly needed affordable housing, or we would not have developed the program, most people who were working still lived in free market housing, right? Your doctor, your lawyer, your professional, they could still afford free market. Well, they can't do that anymore, right? And in addition, downtown is now built out. So at that time, it made sense to say, well, who's really causing the housing problem? It's the new business, the new downtown development that created an employee that didn't previously exist, who now needs to live here. We need housing for them. That made total sense. However, now, while the downtown core is totally built out, every time we put the majority of the onus on the developer of a new downtown building, we are increasing affordable housing, but what we are also doing is artificially inflating the price of that building that gets passed on to the tenant, that gets passed on to you. So we're making our business economy fundamentally not affordable for those who are living here in affordable housing, and frankly otherwise. And at the same time, in the housing world, we now have to recognize we don't have a house problem, we have a housing problem. And so it is, in my view, free market residential that is having the biggest impact on our ability to have a full lived-in community, because every time a mega mansion is built, there's nothing wrong with someone having a mega mansion, coming here and doing all of the positive things that many of those people do in our community, right? I love our nonprofits and arts community. That's because of those people, right? So it's not about them doing something wrong, but it is a reality to say that those units that sit empty most of the year are displacing community. And so as we think about this development neutral model, we need to be asking the question not just who should pay based on employee generation, but I think we should be asking a more holistic question of who should pay based on community displacement. And how do we evaluate what that community displacement looks like, who or what is responsible for it, and how do we appropriately ask them to help us create housing that mitigates for that displacement. Those are the two long term. And again, all of that stuff that seems really complicated is so tied in with the APCHA stuff. So that's what's going on. We have a big work plan ahead of us. We have agreed that these things are important. We have funded them, we have staffed them, and now we go. And we will need your help throughout this, because every time we have something that is slightly controversial, the inclination can be to tuck the tail and run. But we can't run. We have to stand up for this community. We have to stand up for our workers, we have to stand up for our retirees, for our school children, and insist that we are staying right here. This is our home. So we'll need you for that. The last bit of this is development, number 3. Just a reminder that as we move forward into all of this work that is very forward-looking, we are right now developing 3 properties. Burlingame Phase 3, Water Place Phase 2, and the Lumberyard. And those will deliver hundreds of units in the next couple of years. And whether that is 200 units or 800 units is going to come down to you. It's going to be up to you to decide if we want to be inclusionary in our housing policy, if we want to leverage our privilege to house those in need, and if we are willing to accept density in order to have community. Generational wealth. This is how we lift up communities. So bring your ideas forward, bring your support forward. Mostly get excited that we are really starting to move the needle here. Thank you again so much, city staff, APCHA staff, the APCHA board, and city council. These are big moves, and I am grateful to be part of this team. Thank you all.